there are a lot of stereotypes that are now linked with gender-based violence. And one that comes top of my mind is something interesting that I saw while growing up. I will see families where young men and young girls are growing up in. I will see when the young boy would beat the young sister, the mother sometimes would come and comfort the young girl, and she would say, he's being mean to you because he loves you. And then these young women grow up with that mentality that when men are mean to you, then it means they love you. And these women now end up in relationships that are abusive. And the more these men abuse them, they think these men love them. And in fact, it is something that has been, again, so ingrained. And I know of communities where wife beating is still a thing. And in the African context, actually, wife beating was a thing. And I think those traditions have been passed on. And when you visit the informal settlements of Nairobi, there are some communities that will tell you, if women will tell you, kama hakuchapi, hakupendi. Mara moja moja bwana ana akikasirika anakuchapa. So I think that is a stereotype that has entrenched gender-based violence in our country and in communities then within our country.
I think one of the stereotypes which has been very prevalent again is in terms of women being the weaker sex. Physically, yes, because ideally men will probably be more stronger than women. But again, also now it's weakness in terms even of intellect, right? You find that there are men who feel women are inferior in terms of their intellect. And that would be now a ground for them to prey on them in terms of how will I, abuse you or abuse you. And it's very unfortunate because you find in most instances, trickle back to the earlier conversation about, your independence, and the economy bit as well. So because I can be able to control this money that I have, I can equally do everything I want to do with you. You find even in terms of, now physical violence, it equally trickles down to now women being weaker. You find there are actually men who will definitely be very comfortable beating a woman, but not to be comfortable beating a man because men are stronger, they're not able to fight back. Unfortunately, you find that certain situations now where actually men are more weaker in terms of physique and they're actually not being the one who on the receiving end. So when you premise it on that women are weaker and one of the ways to chastise them or to discipline them is actually physical violence, then we actually fail. It's quite unfortunate, even when you look at the reports being given and when you hear why women probably were being assaulted, it's some very flimsy things. We appreciate in tough economic times, it does something to your psychology. But again, that does not become justification for to be able to meet out this violence to this particular person.
Yes.
The stereotype of, and this is a conversation which probably we need to have it wholesomely about women being submissive. It's very stereotypical. We hear it every single time. So back that independent woman will be deemed not to be wanting to get married to a man because she'll not be submissive. So ideally, if you're not being submissive, then you have to find a way to make you submissive, right? Because we're told women generally, from a cultural perspective, a religious perspective, what is deemed to be societally acceptable will be women being submissive. And it's very stereotypical. So even finding out that women themselves have to remind themselves, I have to be submissive to my husband for things to happen. So if you do not become submissive and you want to probably now argue back, then that also becomes a challenge. And I think we need to be able progressively to interrogate and entail and appreciate what this submissiveness entails. It's a stereotype that has been prevalent for the longest time. Interestingly, back in the day, even talk about way back, and especially even before or during colonization period, some of our grandparents told us this thing about submission was not the way you interpret it to be right now, and they used to be able to do whatever it's supposed to do cordially without one wanting to be seen to be on top of the other. Living in a particular society, again remembering that men are told that they're heads, right? This stereotype, of course, men being the head. Now they take it so literally. Like everything and anything I do is what goes. Anything that you say has to come after. And in that case, it goes back to submission, goes back to where are you in terms of this particular relationship or setting, and how do we take it back to default?
Yes.
And it becomes very unfortunate. Yeah.
I think you mentioned something, and I remember reflecting with my mom some time back, and what you mentioned in the past, and even I think some of our parents have that, is that they operate cordially, pamoja, together, not separately. And when they say the man is the head, my mom would always say, you see, the head cannot operate without the neck. So they need each other, they are joined together, they are not separate organs of the body. You see them then as one. And that is how then this older generation will advance the communities and will take things forward. And I think if we, reflecting now on that and reflecting now on what is happening right now, another stereotype that I've seen is online, where if a girl or a lady maybe posts a photo, she's curvy or she's doing something, there's a stereotype that she's trying to woo men for maybe sex or something of that sort. And this has become a form of violence, because I've seen young women being abused online, being called harsh names, because you see, this is a platform that we are using. Some are having fun on those platforms, you know.
True.
That is how they unwind. And you see, so some men coming into those platforms and abusing them. And the sad thing is, even certain women have come also on that platform to abuse this young woman while she's doing what maybe she does. I saw one saying, hey, you know, in our family we dance, we sing, so that is how we relieve ourselves, you know. So the communities have interpreted that differently. So, and right now, so much gender-based violence has also moved online, where we see people being abused online seriously because of certain positions or certain things, or certain positions they've taken on certain issues.
I think another stereotype is the generalization, and especially women, right? Because most of the time we talk about SGBV, the ones to be more on the receiving end will be women. I'm very sure if you look at the statistics, you'll be able to ascertain that women suffer more forms of sexual as well as gender-based violence as compared to the men. And this, in terms of generalization, this goes back to the issue of putting all these women and girls in one big basket. And so when you hear people making comments say, this is how all of you are, it contributes to it, right? Nowadays, we live in a very materialistic society. And so men feel that we can be able to get this woman is through material things. And so when you meet one who does not want your material things, you know, she's independent, has her own things, that in itself becomes subject of abuse. Bearing in mind, gender-based violence does not necessarily have to be physical, right? Even that abuse in itself.
Yes.
And there are quite a number of them. It moves, like you mentioned, goes from the physical to then the online, where we have very different forms, including things like revenge porn, being set ablaze literally on all these social media platforms, and people go at you. So because you have been told one of the ways to get to a person through material things, and they say no because they've been told ideally everybody nowadays is to be wooed materially. That generalization then becomes a problem, because now you put almost every other woman at risk. So you find women going to probably a restaurant, they're having their own meal. They showed up there well capable of paying for their own meal after their probably their solo date, but men will probably make advances. And when the advances are turned down, and of course bearing men with their pride and ego, it becomes a problem. There in itself, that will be a challenge. You find most of them will never walk away. Good example is when women are probably passing by and then they're being catcalled. You don't respond. What follows, most of the time, will be abuse, right? And all these manner of things will be told, and that in itself is a form of violence. And I think we need to move from that particular perspective, that particular mentality and reasoning of all women are the same. They are very distinct in terms of culture, in terms of traditions, in terms of race, in terms of religious backgrounds, and it's very, very important to, like, as a stereotype, to erase this generalization. You find even sometimes men giving examples like, wanawake wote wanafanana, right? They want to make such a statement, and it's very problematic, because then what have you said? moving forward, what's going to happen to this particular women, and we need to be able to create a very conducive environment where I think everybody should be able to thrive.
Yes.
Yeah.